So Damien, can you tell us a little bit about your time in the military, specific when you were a battery commander?
One of my greatest privileges when I was serving in the army was to command soldiers, and my last job in the army was to be a battery commander. So a battery commander is to command part of the artillery, so the big howitzers that shoot long distances, and a battery is made up of about 100 soldiers and 6 big howitzers that are towed by a large truck. And then you have forward observers who go to the front line and call in the artillery onto the enemy and things like that. It was quite a challenge, and I remember when I first got told I was going to take command of this particular unit, it was actually the unit that I didn't want. And it was, in my opinion, up until that point, had been the battery that had not been the best battery. I actually had the opportunity to take some long service leave. So before I went on that posting, I took about 2 months long service leave, and I took a lot of time just thinking about how I was going to take command and what I was going to be like as the leader. And I think anyone who's got a leadership appointment in front of them should take some time to really think about what they're going to do. And one thing I knew up until that point was that a good battery commander could make or break a battery. And I'd obviously worked for some very good, some very bad. So I didn't want to be the bad one. I wanted to be a good one. And I took very seriously my role as well. At this point in time, the Australian Army was deploying troops into Afghanistan, real war, and I took very seriously my responsibility to prepare the soldiers that I had for them to be deployed should they be asked to do so. And I asked myself, what is my criteria for success? And the first rule that I made for myself was that no one would die or be very seriously injured under my command in training, ideally in war as well, but the enemy has a say in war, whether of that. And so I thought to myself, first of all, risk management, what can go wrong? I thought about things that happened in the past where things had gone wrong. The 3 things that were, one was being run over by a truck. That had actually happened in the army, particularly at night time when you're in the field and the trucks are driving around, and often you have another unit that's sort of already there and they're asleep. There's been occasions where that, so I was like, okay, we need to make sure that never happens. The other one was what in the artillery they call firing a mistake, which is when the howitzer is fired, which has a range of 15 kilometres, by the way. So the slightest error on the direction and elevation that is applied, so we make sure that's a no-fail criteria and no room for error. And then the other one was with rifles, an accidental discharge of a rifle shooting somebody. And so it was very hard about that. And then when I took over command of that unit in January of 2008, I'd already had prepared what I was going to say. And it was very unconventional, perhaps. And I remember I had the battery assembled. I go out the front, and my opening words were something like this. Some people say that when you take command of an organisation, you should let it run for 3 to 6 months, see how it operates before you make any changes. And I said, I am not one of those people. And I said, I know exactly how a good battery is supposed to run, and we're going to run it that way from day one. I'm in command. I'm the battery commander, but I want you all to know that I respect and appreciate all of you, and we're all going to do this together. And then controversially, I said, I will not entertain anyone submitting their discharge or a transfer out of the unit for 6 months. And then someone said to me, you can't say that, sir. And I said, well, I just did. And I said, I will not entertain it. I will not support it. I said, I want you all to give me 6 months. After that 6 months, so on 1 July, I said, if anyone's still got any concerns and doesn't want to be here then I'll gladly sign your discharge, So I gave this opening speech, and then obviously there's a bit of apprehension about, okay, who is this guy and what's he doing? And then the first thing I did is I brought in a thing which I called BC Day, which is Battery Commanders Day. And on the first Monday of every month, we would do a theory test followed by some practical testing. And I had designed this theory test, which I called the Essential Knowledge Test, and it was everything that everyone needed to know without reference to notes. So, I used to say that you could remember it in the middle of the night, in the pouring rain, on the corner of 4 maps in the field, where you're not allowed to pull out your torch, you can't pull out a notebook, it has to be in your head. And my criteria for this was anything relating to safety, anything relating to the core performance of our duty, which was to fire the artillery accurately and safely. And then also the morale and pride in the unit, which is a little bit of battery history. And it was a very proud battery that had a long history, you know. So I brought this test in, and it's a really great story, actually. First of all, there was massive opposition to me making people do this test. I had some of my senior soldiers saying, "Sir, you cannot make them do this." And I said, "Why not?" And I said, "What policy is there that says I can't?" And they said, "Well, they've already been assessed." And I said, "Well, Sergeant Major, if they've already been assessed, they should all pass the first time around." So anyway, this test was conducted, and 50% of the battery failed the test. And I did the test myself. I sat there in the middle, led by example, sat in the middle of the room, did the test as well. And interestingly enough, I did get one question wrong because it was off, the answer box was off to the side and I missed it. But as my own test, so a bit embarrassing. But I did the test myself, and half the battery failed. And at this point in time, it was cool to fail. People were joking about it. And then I said, right, everyone who failed, you will come back at 1600 hours, which was the knockoff time. You'll come back every day and retest until you pass. Not only that, your immediate supervisor will be there too. And then whoever assessed the test, they had to sign off on it as well. And so then it was no longer funny, and people were hating me at this stage. And one of my mentors that I used to follow, he said, "Keep it up until the bitching turns to bragging." So at this point in time, I just kept that in mind. And so I made them do this test again and again and again. By the fourth day, the last two people passed, and everyone now was able to remember all this information. And then it was at 5 o'clock, I was sitting at my desk and someone knocked on my door. It was a bombardier. I won't say his name to protect him. Yeah, the bombardier is a junior rank. It's like 2 stripes. It's probably about 3 levels down from where I was as the battery commander. And this guy knocked on my door. I said, "Yes, bombardier." And he said, "Sir," he saluted me. And I said, "What is it, bombardier?" And it's very unusual, like you should not come to my office at all. And he said, "Sir, I just wanted to thank you." He goes, "Up until this point in my life, I was convinced that I was a dumb," swear word, and he said, "But today, for the first time in my life, I got over 90% in a test, and I've got you to thank for that, and because you kicked my butt and didn't give up on me and didn't let me give up on myself, and I'm on top of the world, and thank you, sir." And he saluted me and he left, and I almost had a little tear in my eye because I thought, wow, there's something powerful going on here. Come back to that saying, keep it up until the bitching turns to boasting. What then started to happen is that my guys started to win everything. They started doing extremely well in any way that they were tested. When we went to the field, they were the fastest, they didn't make mistakes, and the level of morale lifted because everyone knew that they were good, not through some phony, egotistical, we're the best kind of, but because of a real measured, objective test. I even encouraged my soldiers when I said, "Listen, when you're in the mess and the soldiers from the other battery are there, ask them questions from the test and challenge them to ask you questions and watch what happens." And then there's the School of Artillery, and whenever there was a promotion course, every battery in the army would send some soldiers to be on that course. And if I sent anyone from my battery, they would be the top 3 students on the course. And so word started getting around and morale went through the roof. By 1 July, no one wanted to leave because we were the best. We were really good. And I had one soldier, he came and knocked on my door, and he knocked on my door and he said, "Sir," he goes, "I don't want to leave, but I joined the army to become a carpenter. Army recruiting lied to me. They said I could come to artillery and do carpentry, just be here for a few years. I've been here for 8 years and I really want to go. And I've done what you said. I've done the 6 months. I've been a good soldier. Will you please support my transfer?" And I said to him, "Come here." And I signed it straight there on the spot. I said, "Mate, I'm so sorry." And he said, "No, sir, it's been wonderful, but this is what I want to do, and I can't be in the army forever, and I have to think about my family and what I'm going to do when I leave, and I'll be more useful as a carpenter than a gunner in the civilian world." And I said, okay. So he left. In the 2 years that I was in command, we only had 2 people leave, him, and the other one was a psych discharge who was unfortunately not well mentally, and we initiated that, and we actually had him discharged because he didn't want to go, but he wasn't fit to fight. So very few organisations can say that of 100 people, that in 2 years you only had 2 people leave, and one of which was against his will. So that, I think that's a 0.5% loss rate, which is, it's 1% per year. So very, very proud of that result. And what was interesting about that, and this is the moral of the story, is for all leaders, is don't be afraid to set and demand high standards of your people, because they will hate you at first, but they'll respect you and appreciate you for it later when they win everything and when they're really good. Everyone wants to be on that winning sporting team. Everyone wants to be on the winning team. And when you see like a sporting team win the grand final and you see the players, they're all celebrating with the coach. They love the coach. They throw the ice bucket over the coach and they're all holding the coach up because they know without the coach, they couldn't have done it. And I'm sure if you go back to the start, there'll be lots of occasions where all of those players would have had run-ins with the coach, would have had conflict with the coach, but the coach got them all there and was a hard taskmaster and got them there. And I think that's the one lesson that I would share about when you're in charge. Don't be afraid to be a hard taskmaster. Don't be afraid to set a high standard, but do it with the best intentions, right? And as I said, you're the leader. Your job is to get the mission done. What's the mission? Whatever it is your organisation does, whether it makes paper clips or whether it's an artillery unit in the army, whatever it does, make sure it does it well to the best possible standard.